Welcome to Our Darling Town, the podcast where we explore the heart and soul of Darlington through its local independent businesses and the people that make it special. I'm James Carver.
I'm Henry Carver, and we're here to shine a spotlight on our beloved town. Join us as we sit down with the passionate local people to delve into their stories and uncover the unique contributions they make to our community and to find out about the town where we live.
Get ready to be inspired by the people and stories that make Darlington truly special.
The first person to be asked to return to Our Darling Town podcast. What a claim to fame that is. If thy master will sell me Raby Castle, I will pay for it with the same metal, which is a wonderful way of sticking two fingers up at the dastardly derailing top.
And also, do you not think George Stephenson just had blisters?
He could well enough. Yes.
Today we're thrilled to welcome back a very special guest to Our Darling Town, someone many of you will remember from Season 1, Episode 10. Chris Lloyd, the chief features writer for the Northern Echo, is joining us once again. Chris is truly a fountain of knowledge when it comes to Darlington and its rich, layered history. The response we had to his previous episode was incredible. So many of you reached out to say how captivated you were by the stories he shared. We knew we had to have him back. And what better time than now, as Darlington marks a momentous occasion, the 200-year anniversary of the Stockton to Darlington Railway, the world's first passenger railway. It's a pivotal moment, not just for our town, but the history of transportation and innovation as a whole. Chris is here to help us unpack the significance of this event, share some amazing tales from the past, and offer his unique insights into what this anniversary means for Darlington today.
Hello.
Good morning, Chris.
Hello.
And welcome
Good
back.
morning.
Welcome back. A few episodes have happened since we had you on.
Yeah.
What's happened with you and basically recent events, obviously, with the railway over the course of the last 6 months or so?
Yeah, so I have just managed to publish what we're calling a bookazine. So it's neither a magazine nor a book, it's kind of a hybrid child.
The bookazine.
There it is, about the Stockton and Darlington Railway. It's my version of how it came into being 200 years ago, as you say, although I take the story right back to, I think, 1767, when a chap dug a trial stretch of canal on the top of Cockfield Fell, a chap called George Dixon, whose brother, Jeremiah, that same year, was surveying the Mason-Dixon line in the United States between the free states of the South and the slave-owning states of the North. And he wanted to join his coal mine on the top of remote Cockfield Fell with a port, so he could get the coal out to market quicker than putting it onto the backs of ponies and watching it slowly trap off into the distance. So he dug this trial stretch of canal, tried to persuade the Duke of Cleveland of Raby Castle to give him £3 million so he could build a canal from the top of Cockfield Fell down to the River Tees at Winston sort of area, dredge out the River Tees so he could sail his boat along there to Stockton and then off to London to make lots of money. The Duke of Cleveland kind of rewound him and said, "How much money do you want? £3 million? Well, I'll give you 50 quid. And with that, they held a meeting in the Post House on the corner of Post House Wynd and High Row in November 1767, where they agreed to instruct the King of Canals, James Brindley, to kind of do a proper survey about a canal joining the coalfield of South Durham with a seaport at Stockton. And that is called the Winston to Stockton Canal Plan. And in that meeting were the grandsons of Jonathan Backhouse, the banker, and Edward Pease, the father of the railways. And so that canal plan is really an interesting document because it is the start of that concept of joining coalfield with seaport. I love the fact that it's even got Cockerton is mentioned on this canal plan as the canal kind of goes through Cockerton. And to this day, there is a saying in Darlington that if you're really, really foolish, you get sent to Cockerton docks because you cannot believe Cockerton's got any docks. It's on a pathetic trickle of a beck. There can never be a boat or a ship hanging out there. And so it's a bit like in the old days when you went to work in a factory and on your first day you were sent to the stores to ask for a long stand. Yeah. And they told you to stand in the corner for a long time and everyone thought it was hysterically funny.
Some tartan paint.
That's it, yeah. So you go to Cockerton docks and ask for the Cockerton docks and everyone laughs at you. But on the canal plan of 1767, there could well have been some form of a basin there. So that story has kind of roots in history. So you can trace really that beginnings of that transport revolution back to the canal plan. They couldn't raise money to dig the canal, but every generation looked at it again, this idea, coalfield, seaport, how are we going to do that? Until in the 1819, the Quakers, the grandsons of those two Backhouse and Pisas, they really managed to move things forward a lot.
Fabulous. So that's in the book as in that you created.
Yeah, start with all that. Yeah.
So that's the start of it.
Yeah.
Tell us. Obviously, the Quakers had an influential, part to play within the birth of the railway. Tell us what happened next in the timeline.
Well, I love all the stories that go along with all this side of things. So Darlington it takes the lead largely because of the Quaker network of banks that give it the power. Stockton, being Stockton, kind of develops a rival plan to join Coalfield with itself, which bypasses Darlington, much to Darlington's dismay and the people of Yarm's dismay as well. And so we've got two rival camps for a while, kind of racing into the future. Stockton can't raise the money. Darlington can because of the Quaker banks. And that is best exemplified by a fantastic story from 1819 where the Darlington route was being planned to run across land owned by the Duke of Cleveland of Raby Castle. And he was mad keen on fox hunting. And he feared that if some sort of transport corridor were built across his land, stinky, clattering trains would scare his foxes away and he'd have nothing to go out and hunt. So he determines to derail the railway. He tries to do it by parliamentary means, first of all. You have to get planning permission from Parliament to build something like a railway. So he stuffs the committee with his landowning pals trying to stop the railway. When that fails, he comes up with a brilliant local plan, because in those days it said on the back of a £5 note, I promise to pay the bearer on demand £5 of gold bullion. Still does say that on the back of the notes, actually. So you could go take your note into the bank and they had to exchange it into gold there and then. So he ordered all of his tenants in Teesdale to quietly collect up Backhouse's banknotes. And then his plan was to take them all down to the bank on the High Road where Barclays is today and demand there and then that they're all exchanged into gold bullion, knowing full well this provincial bank would not have enough gold in the High Road vaults for such a big deal. So the bank would collapse, bringing down the railway that it was bankrolling, and his foxes would live happily until he went out and gave them a good chasing. Head banker Jonathan Backhouse got wind of this dastardly scheme, and he dashes down the Great North Road in his horse and carriage, goes round the Quaker banks, collecting all the gold bullion he can lay his hands on, loading it into his carriage, dashing back up the Great North Road until he comes to Croft Bridge, 3 miles outside of Darlington, where one of the wheels comes off his wagon and he grinds to a halt. Now, imagine the drama of this. There he is stuck, 3 miles south of Darlow, and the Duke of Cleveland's agent is walking along High Road with a bag stuffed full of banknotes, about to bankrupt the bank and crash the railway and save the foxes. But Jonathan's a really resourceful fellow. I love this story. He's a really resourceful fellow. He realises, gets out and has a look, realises that if he takes the gold bullion off the broken front axle and puts it at the back of the carriage on the good rear axle, that will cause the broken axle to rise up off the ground. And so kind of with 2 wheels on his wagon, doing a wheelie, clinging on, he dashes the 3 miles into High Road, and he's there as the agent arrives, and he exchanges all the notes into gold bullion. And he even has a little pile of gold left. And as the agent is walking out the door onto High Road, he shouts after him, "If thy master will sell me Raby Castle, I will pay for it with the same metal," which is a wonderful way of sticking 2 fingers up at the dastardly derailing toff. Now, there is a degree of truth in this story. It gives rise to the worst pun in local history, because Jonathan's act of taking the gold bullion off the broken front axle onto the good rear axle, raising it up off the ground, is known as how Jonathan Backhouse, the banker, balanced the cash which is pretty poor. In Barclays archives, they have the Backhouse Bank files, and they say that in 1819, in June, Jonathan Backhouse goes to London to bank cash London £23,000, which is about £2.4 million in today's money. That's the amount of gold he got. Then the following month, there is a line that says, wheel demolished, £2, 3 shillings. So there seems to be a great deal of at least some truth in this fabulous story. And so for £2 and 3 shillings, the bank was saved, the railway was saved, and the Foxes, well, I don't know what they thought about the situation, really, because they could live nicely in their man-made earths without being, until the Duke came and gave them a good chasing. But anyhow, it's a great story. But it also illustrates how the Quakers had this national network of business and finance that was able to get behind the Darlington plan for the railway. And the reason people often ask me, why is it called, therefore, the Stockton and Darlington Railway and not the Darlington and some silly place called
honestly,
Stockton?
That was on the tip of the tongue.
And I think that was just a PR exercise, really. The Darlingtonians knew that they would have to get Stockton on board at some time. And even though Stockton was pursuing its own kind of plan that bypassed Darlow, they knew Stockton would have to come on board. So they kind of threw this little bit of trinket at Stockton. Well, you can go first. We're the driving force. And Darlington really is the driving force.
It set off from Darlington.
Well, our opening day is September the 27th, 1825. And it starts... really, the first lump of coal is dug out of the ground at Witton Park Colliery, which is just north of West Auckland. That lump of coal is then drawn by a stationary engine on the top of Etherley Incline, a mile up that incline, which in 1825, that incline, which is just a great heap of earth that you can still go and see, that was regarded as one of the wonders of the world. That people came, thousands of people seem to have come for opening day of the railway, and they came to gawp at that embankment, because it's just a marvel that a man's machine can move so much earth and then kind of get it to operate, this wagon going up it. So it was one of the wonders of the world. So from the top of Etherley Incline, it's lowered down to West Auckland, where it goes over the world's first cast iron railway bridge, designed by George Stephenson, over the River Gornless on the edge of West Auckland. And you can still see the parapets for that bridge. And they're about, I think, to put some form of a walkway back over the parapets for the 200th anniversary. Then it is hauled up to the top of Brusselton Incline on the edge of Shildon. And then it is lowered down the other side into Shildon to the New Mason's Arms, outside the New Mason's Arms pub, where locomotion number 1 is standing in steam, ready to collect the wagons that have come up and down, and then picks them up and begins what could be described as the world's first passenger railway journey. It could be described as that. It's really all about moving coal, but they quickly discover that people are also interested in moving, and this is the really interesting thing about the Stockton and Darlington Railway, is the way it overcomes problems that no one's ever had to encounter before. Like on opening day, there is one passenger carriage in that inaugural train. The rest of the 38 wagons, I think it is, are full of coal and flour. So you've got loads of people sitting on the top of coal trucks and things. But they, for the opening day, Robert Stephenson Co. up in Newcastle had made Experiment, which is the world's first passenger coach. And no one had ever moved people or designed a carriage to move people on a railway before, because it's never happened before. And so the Experiment really looks like a shed on top of some old pram wheels, with people sitting down the sides of it. But that was the beginnings of the passenger transport revolution, really. So it's that sort of thing that the Stockton and Darlington Railway really helps create, like at the other really interesting thing, I think, is that no one had thought of how you handle passengers on a railway. What sort of, if you've got people just kind of turning up, do they just hang out in the rain, or do you need some form of cover for them? Do they need to buy a ticket? Do they need a beer or a bit of refreshment? Well, how do you do that? And so the Stockton and Darlington Railway quickly begins to design what are called prototype stations, which we would recognise today as pubs, really. But you've got the Railway Tavern in Northgate. You've got at Hyington, an old pub. It was called Locomotion Number One. It's been empty now for about 8 years. And English historic England says that is the world's first station. Because it's a kind of a line-side halt that develops into a pub quite quickly, and you can buy tickets there, you get a refreshment there, you get a bit of shelter there, and then you step out onto what is probably the world's first platform. How exciting is that? The world's first platform, and wait there to get onto your train. And so that really is kind of the start of overcoming problems that no one's ever really thought of before. Another one of my favourite obstacles to overcome is, as I mentioned, the incline at Brusselton. Which is about 1.25 miles long. So you've got an engine man sat in his stationary wagon engine at the top of the incline, drawing the trucks up. But how does he know when to start drawing the trucks up when they are being connected to his rope 1.25 miles away, a long way away? So sometimes he has binoculars, but Shildon is a pretty foggy sort of a place. So he still has to operate during the fog. So they invent some sort of primitive signalling system of a spinning disc that he can just discern from 1.5 miles away. And that's one of the world's first railway signalling systems that comes along. So there are all these wonderful things. Again, going back to, once you start me on these things, it's very difficult to stop me. But if you go to the Railway Tavern in Northgate, great historic building. It is. It seems to be deliberately designed so it's set back from the road line, the street line, and by the John Street traffic lights there. Mm-hmm. And that's because if you go into Westbrook Villas, do you know Westbrook Villas? Yeah. Brilliant collection of properties. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And behind them is a coal drop. A big, tall wall, the remains of a coal drop, which was where the coal was distributed to the people of Darlington on opening day. And so the Railway Tavern is deliberately placed so that merchants could nip in for a quick beer, wait for their train to come into the Westbrook Villas coal drops. And the pub seems to be deliberately set back from the street line so you can park your wagon outside whilst you're waiting, having a swift beer. So that is the world's first station car park. This is incredible stuff we have here in Darlington. So I love all that sort of story that goes along with these things.
Absolutely. Can you give the listeners and ourselves a sense of why the Stockton and Darlington Railway was such a groundbreaking achievement 200 years ago?
Well, this is the huge debate in kind of world history, really, about what its real claim to fame is. Really, it doesn't pioneer very much. It overcomes some obstacles, as I've mentioned there. But what it does is it brings all the latest technology together. You've heard about people like Richard Trevithick in Cornwall who are building little steam engines and running them round on circular tracks kind of 20 years before the Stockton and Darlington Railway. So it didn't invent things like the steam engine, but it brings all the latest technology together, then innovates things like passenger carriages, signalling systems, and then it makes the whole lot work over an industrial length, 26 miles from Witton Park down to Stockton with branch lines running off it. It proves it can work. It proves that this steam power technology, which has a terrible habit of blowing up, exploding and killing lots of people, but it proves that it can actually work and it can make money. And it also proves that not only can it move coal in industrial quantities, But also, there are all sorts of other things that can be moved, like people. They suddenly discover that there is going to be a market for people moving. One of my favourite little snippets of nonsense is that I think in 1826, a publican in Shildon sold a ticket for humans to be transported from Shildon to Stockton, and he included in the price of the railway ticket entrance into Stockton races. So this is almost the world's first world's first package holiday.
Yeah.
You know, but people moving for leisure. That's kind of an incredible thought, really. We do it all the time now, but when you're kind of tied to an expensive horse, that sort of thing wasn't open to ordinary people, and yet now they could just kind of have a day out or a holiday. It's extraordinary changes to attitudes it brought about.
Fantastic. What's Darlington doing to celebrate the achievement this
Yeah,
year?
so there is I should also say that the rail industry has now got behind the Stockton and Darlington Railway, and it's called Rail 200 on a national level. So there are all sorts of competing claims, like the Liverpool and Manchester, which opened 5 years later, has in the past thought that it was the first, but the rail industry is now behind Darlington, which is fantastic. So there are kind of a series of events going on through the year. It was opened with a pageant at the Kinran site in Bishop Auckland. That was a brilliant drone display. I'd never seen these drone things, but they are absolutely everywhere now. They are the kind of technological thing of the moment, where you've got 400 drones hovering in the air, in a squad, in a phalanx, spelling out S&DR 200. And so you've got all these pinpricks of light spelling it out. But when you sat and actually thought about the technology behind it, I know, it is quite staggering. So that was a really good opening event. So there are all sorts of community events going on, involving school children, and I was just sent a video last night from the Northern College of Art in Hartlepool, and all of their first year students in their end of term displays have done posters about the railway. But it's all building up to a reenactment of the opening day in September, over the weekend of September the 26th, 27th, 28th, I think it is, perhaps those dates aren't quite right, where a replica of Locomotion Number 1 is going to reenact the opening day, going the first day into Shildon, and then the second day from Shildon to Darlow, and then Darlow to Stockton. And that should be an event that attracts huge crowds. In 1975, there are hundreds of thousands of people for the 150th anniversary. So, so if it goes right, it could be spectacular.
Fantastic. I look forward to that. You've, needless to say, spent many years researching the history of Darlington's Stockton Railway. What are some of the lesser-known stories and characters connected to the railway that people might not have ever heard of before? Anything that springs to mind?
Yes, there are loads of great stories. Like I love the fact that the original tender of for the water barrel for Locomotion Number 1 was built by a Quaker Cooper barrel maker called Mason Brotherton, I think, in Blackwell Gate. And the barrel was so large that he didn't make it in his workshop in Blackwell Gate. He actually manufactured it in the street because he feared he wouldn't be able to get it out. And so I think that little bit of the story takes place in where Dertona Kitchens used to be, in that alleyway there. So so right down to that sort of little detail. On the High Row, we've got the offices where the Stockton and Darlington Railway rented rooms for the first time. George Stephenson comes there to be officially kind of signed on as the engineer. The best of the stories, though, involves Domino's Pizza Parlour and the derelict buildings around it, the kebab takeaway shops there in Northgate. This is April the 19th, 1821, when that's the home of Edward Pease, the father of the railways, who really, more than anybody, drives the railway forward. He's the one who has the trust and the imagination to adopt steam power, and he's at home on the 19th of April 1821 in that property that's now 2 kebab gaffs and Domino's Pizza Parlour. He's waiting for news from London that the bill giving him permission to build the railway has received royal assent. At that stage, 1821, they don't know whether it's going to be a railway, a tramway, half a canal, half a railway. All they know it's going to be some form of a transport system, and whether it's horsepower or steam power, they still haven't really worked out. George Stephenson, though, up on Tyneside, has been dabbling in steam engines for at least 10 years. He knows what he's talking about, and he's heard about this project in the south of the county, and he thinks that it really needs to be steam power, not horsepower, that pulls this new railway. So on that same day, probably by coincidence, he takes a stagecoach from Newcastle down to Stockton, and then he walks the length of the planned line from Stockton into Darlington, so that when he gets to Mr. Pease's house, he knows the topography of the line that he's about to talk about. He gets to Northgate, and there are 2 versions of this story. One version of the story says that he's so poor that he walks from Stockton to Darlington barefoot to save on the shoe leather. And when he gets to Bulmerstone, the big erratic porphyry in Northgate behind the technical college railings, a big stone, he uses the stone to sit on and put his shoes back on, and then he walks over the road and knocks on Mr. Pease's door wearing his shoes. The other version of the story says that he walks from Stockton to Darlington wearing his shoes, but they get so muddy in the walking that when he gets to Bulmerstone, he realises that he has to take them off, and so he takes them off on the stone, and there's a big painting in Darlington Library showing him taking the shoes off on the stone or putting them back on the stone. Anyway, it didn't really matter. He didn't have an appointment, and so Mr. Pease's butler boots him out into the Northgate night. Pease, though, is upstairs waiting for news from London, hears the kind of commotion going on, comes rushing downstairs and invites Stephenson and his friend Nicholas Wood in, and they go into the kitchen, which is, because it's not a proper meeting, there's no appointment as such, so they go into the kitchen, which is now where the Best Kebab 1 takeaway is, on the front there. And this is where Stephenson, who is regarded as the father of the locomotive, meets Edward Pease, the father of the railways, probably for the first time. And Stephenson, in this meeting, persuades Pease that it will be steam power. It will be steam power and not horsepower that drives this railway forward. And so that meeting really does change the world. Steam power would have come in. No one's saying that people would have overlooked it. It would have come in. But that meeting means that the Stockton and Darlington Railway really embraces that latest technology, which puts it at the world-leading edge when it opens in 1825. And you've got people from engineers from France, from Prussia, from America coming to this area to see how these steam things actually work, and how they do so without really exploding and killing loads of people as well. So that meeting is absolutely crucial. And I would say that if that meeting were in America, the birthplace of the railroad, you'd have neon signs flashing all over the place and burger bars and all this sort of stuff, raking in the cash. And it's derelict in Darlington. And the council has bought a section of it, and they're trying to do something with it, but it's just so overlooked. It's really sad. Just like the world's first station at Hying Darlington, which is derelict as well. There's a campaign to save it, and hopefully for that one there is going to be some hope this summer, I think.
Hopefully. A couple of things picked up on there. I mean, if I was Best Kebab 1, I would be celebrating the fact that the meeting between Stevenson and Pease happened in their shop. And I would probably try and celebrate that.
Yes.
Do a special
There is
kebab.
Babul's. They've got the railway curry on their menu, and that's because they're from Bangladesh, and apparently on the trains in Bangladesh.
Bombay Gate have railway lamb.
Oh, right. Yeah, well, it's lamb, yes. It's always lamb. They kind of stew up as they're going through the vast open spaces, and so this curry seems to change flavour as it goes down the line, as people get on and add different bits into it and things. So yes, you're quite right. There's so much weird potential that you can do, even curries and even kebabs. Yeah.
And also, do you not think George Stevenson just had blisters?
He could well enough. Yes.
It's probably more realistic. But yeah, just had that thought. Tell us more about your bookazine as well.
Well, the bookazine has gone extraordinarily well. We sold 1,300 copies before it had been published. It's now sold over 4,000 copies, and they are literally kind of going around the world, which is, one of my tedious local history books they sell about 1,500. So for it to have done kind of over 4,000 in a month is quite extraordinary, really. So it's a tenner. It's available from Waterstones, from Hopetown, from the Northern Echo's kind of shop online sites as well. And I'm out and about giving talks and things and flogging it to all and sundry. But it's actually come out really well. I'm really, really pleased with it.
Fabulous. So no doubt you're looking forward to the celebrations in September. Have you got any events coming up that you're doing similar talks or sort of?
I've just done a talk in Darlington Library. I did another one to Darlington Rotary Club. In a week or so's time, I'm doing a little thing for the Tees Valley Business Club there, and then I'm busy with kind of WIs and all that sort of thing. So and there are going to be loads of stuff. Like Hitachi are doing an open day in the first weekend in October, because they're right next to the locomotion to the Harrington Station site there, and this is the first time that members of the public will be able to get onto the Hitachi site and have a romp around there, and that's really fascinating, because they are building trains, the new generation of trains, right next to the track bed of the Stockton and Darlington Railway. So there are all sorts of kind of connections that are being made, and all sorts of events going on.
Fabulous. Chris, fine well we could sit here for another 40 minutes or so to talk all things railway, all things history about Darlington. James, have you got anything else you'd like to ask?
No, that was brilliant, but I'll be going to Waterstones to get a couple of questions. Certainly. So.
Most definitely. There always is unsaid questions, and I know fine well that I'll think of something as soon as I listen back. I want to delve into different sort of areas. Chris, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and we can't wait for the celebrations this year, and you've always giving us a fantastic episode, and you are the first return podcast guest.
Excellent.
So yes.
Well, that is brilliant. So my previous greatest claim to fame was that I was one of only 4 people in the country invited to return onto Michael Portillo's Great British Railway Journeys. So now I am the first person to be asked to return to our Darlington podcast. What a claim to fame that is.
I think you might trump us.
No, I don't.
You've been in the presence of pretty much every Prime Minister.
That's right. I've interviewed every Prime Minister back, including starting off with John Major. Although Liz Truss, 44 days, she eluded me. She had other things to do than talk to me. But yeah.
Fabulous. Well, I'd like to say, Chris, thank you very much indeed. Always a pleasure.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.